How's it going, everybody? I'm Andrew Robson, and you are watching RAKUYO's Deciduous Bonsai channel. On today's episode, I am going to share with you my favorite deciduous trees from the 2022 Pacific Bonsai Expo. Now, the first tree that we're going to talk about is this ZOVA from Howard Griesler. Howard's a friend of mine who lives here in Portland, and I've been in love with this ZOVA for quite some time, and I was so glad that he brought it to the expo to share it with everybody. You know, it's a very old ZOVA. We don't see many old ZOVAs in the United States, and this has really beautiful, nice, dense, mature branching. It shows a lot of age on the trunk, and it's just a lovely little tree. Now, this is in the large deciduous category, and even though this tree wasn't a very big tree in that category, it was only 24 inches, it's just a beautiful tree that really, you know, held its own and was just really pleasing for people to look at. You know, ZOVA brooms are so nice, and even though they're pretty common in Japan, we don't see them as much in the United States. So I was just in love with this tree. You know, if it was my tree, I'd probably put it in a rectangular pot, which I think is a better counterpoint for that very formal style that we put the ZOVAs in. But other than that, I think it's really just an incredible, beautiful ZOVA, and was really nice to see it at the show. So the next tree we're going to look at is Dennis Wojtyła's Washington Hawthorne. I am absolutely in love with this tree. In fact, it was probably one of my favorite deciduous bonsai at the expo out of all the trees there. I've loved this tree for a long time. This tree has been around and people have seen it. It won Best Deciduous at the US National Show a few years ago, and it's just a really outstanding deciduous tree. One of the things I love about it is it's not a tree trying to look like a bonsai, it's a bonsai trying to look like a tree. This is a nice naturalistic representation of a hawthorn. And one of the things that really shows off Dennis's skill with this tree is that, you know, hawthorns have really ugly growth if you don't do any wiring. The growth can be very angular, kind of like a crabapple. And, you know, when we look at this hawthorn bonsai, you know, it's probably the best hawthorn bonsai in the United States because Dennis has put such great work and effort into making nice movements in the branching. And I think this tree really reflects it. It's an outstanding tree. I gave it, you know, the top score that I could, and I think I even voted for it for Best in Show because it's just a really outstanding deciduous bonsai. It's also a nice counterpoint to some of the more fresh Yamadori that were in the room that have only been bonsai for a few years. When you look at the branching of this tree, you really realize, wow, bonsai is something that you can't just make over time or have in an instant. Bonsai needs to be made over time. And this tree really shows that. It was grown in a pot for Dennis for probably 30 years, and it really shows. Now, the next tree we're going to look at is a European beech forest that Jonas Dupuy showed. And I thought this was the best forest at the expo for a few reasons. The first is it had nice difference in trunk sizes. It was also a very nicely composed forest. It was very balanced. It had a wonderful feeling. And the trunks did not have any major scarring or anything, which is pretty important for a beech. So I really love this forest. I love that forests can kind of hold their own next to some of this bigger single trunk trees that you tend to see in a bonsai exhibit. I think a forest is a really nice way to add some variety to the exhibit and just give our viewers a rest from all of these powerful single trunk trees. So I love that this European beech forest kind of did that. It's a beautiful, beautiful forest. The antique Chinese pot pairing that it's in, I think, is incredibly lovely, and it was just fun to see at the show. You know, I think this tree in, you know, another 5 to 10 years, once, you know, it doubles or quadruples the dense twigging that it has, which beech can definitely do, I think once it really gets that really nice fine twigging, this is going to be a very special bonsai. So the next tree we're going to look at is a Chichi Gko, and this was displayed by an anonymous exhibitor. This was probably my second favorite deciduous bonsai at the Pacific Bonsai Expo. It is such a good ginkgo, it's hard to put it into words, but I'll try here. Its age. We see a lot of ginkgo bonsai, but we don't see a lot of ginkgo bonsai that are this old. So that was the first thing of note. Now, going along with that, its age in comparison with its health was pretty remarkable. If you talk to a non-bonsai, just a regular arborist, they'll tell you ginkgo are kind of trash trees because they are very lossy. They lose a lot of branches, especially when they get some age. And for this ginkgo bonsai to have that age but still be very vigorous is a good testament to the care that its owner is providing it on a daily basis. So its age was impressive, and its health was impressive, but even more than that, the density of this ginkgo was quite good. You see a lot of ginkgo flame style bonsai, but you don't see a lot of them that are as dense as this while holding true to that style. So the combination of those three things I think really made this tree shine, and was one of my favorite trees in the entire exhibit. I thought the pot was a very great pairing because the flame style ginkgo, like I said about the Zelkova, is such a traditional form that having a strong anchor point to that, like a rectangle, can actually be nicer than having an oval. And so I thought the green rectangle was a really beautiful pairing. I would have liked to see the stand just a little bit wider, but otherwise I thought this was a pretty flawless bonsai. Now we're going to jump over into the medium category, and the tree that won the medium category, the Korean hornbeam from my friend Jonas, is a really outstanding little hornbeam. It's a collected trunk, but for it to be a collected trunk, to have such a traditional format, you don't tend to see that too often. Most collected trunks have some kind of more wildness to them, and so seeing that Yamadori style with a very traditional format was actually pretty nice, and it's pretty rare. So that was something of note. Jonas has done great branch work with this tree over the years, and you can go on his blog, Bonsai Tonight, and see all of that progress. Korean hornbeams tend to create branches that kind of loop around, and to have really nice, beautiful branching that reaches outwards is quite a testament to good technique and work over time, and I think that's been what's being done on this bonsai. So Jonas is kind of famous for this tree, and that's one of the great things about the expo is you get to see so many famous, noteworthy American trees on display, and so I thought it was totally deserving of the prize and really nice to have it highlighted at the Pacific Bonsai Expo. The next tree we're going to look at is a Shishi Gashira Japanese maple that was grown by Bill Valvanis. Now, Bill Valvanis is such an American icon in the art of bonsai, and the fact that he has done so much with deciduous has really pushed the deciduous bonsai platform across bonsai in America, and we're really, really thankful for him for being one of the first people to do that. One of the remarkable things about Bill's trees, and this Shishi Gashira really highlights it, is its time in training in a container. Bill started this tree 40 plus years ago, might even be 50 years ago now, and that is just remarkable looking at the fact that he started this from a humble piece of nursery stock or an air layer. It's just an incredible bonsai. If you look at the base, that's my favorite part about this tree, and that really shows that time in training. I probably would have done the branch work a little bit differently had I been designing this tree from scratch, but really kudos to Bill for such a beautiful Shishi Gashira Japanese maple. I think this tree is a bonsai celebrity here in the United States. We've seen it at a lot of big exhibits, and having it at the expo was really special. So I love this little tree. It's definitely one of the best Shishi Gashira in the United States, and it's a real testament to Bill's outstanding work on deciduous bonsai. Now, also from the medium category, I thought one of the second trees was one of my favorite deciduous bonsai at the expo. And that second tree was a Chichi Quint that accompanied Wes Jones's Japanese black pine. Now this little Chichi Quint, even though it was a secondary tree in this display, I thought it was one of the best secondary trees, or real shohin of the entire room. It's a beautiful little Chichi. Now, the thing that makes this better than most Chichi that you see is that this tree was grown from a root cutting. And you can see that twisty gnarliness in the trunk of this plant that you just can't generate if you are wrapping a wire from a tip cutting. And so the fact that this is a root cutting that was built over the last 15 years is really, really remarkable, and such a great little tree. The black pine is a beautiful pine, but really this little Chichi for me stood out as a beautiful little plant. The pairing of it in that antique Chinese pot, matched the age that's gone into the work of the tree, and so I thought that was really nice. And it's just a gorgeous little specimen. Now I'm going to show you some of the trees that RAKUYO had at the Pacific Bonsai Expo. I showed 3 large deciduous bonsai because that's kind of the bread and butter of what we do here in the garden. And these are 3 of my favorite trees that I have here, and so showing them off at this world-class exhibit was a really special opportunity to document them and celebrate how far we've come with these trees. The first one is a Japanese maple. Now, this tree came into my possession about a year before the show, but it was owned by a client, and I was working on the tree with the client for many years prior to when it came to RAKUYO. This is just an outstanding tree. I don't know of many Japanese maples of this quality in the United States, and so having it here in the garden as an example of what a 5, 6, 7 decade Japanese maple can yield is quite special. This tree has an incredible nabari, one of the largest nabari I've seen on a bonsai in the US. And it's just a really nice, elegant, traditional format for what Japanese maple can be. In the future, we're going to work at creating a little bit more density of the branching, but for being so old, this is actually right on par with what you would see density-wise if you looked at the average Japanese maple in the Kokofu exhibit in Japan. So we can definitely make some improvements, but for being such an old tree, this is pretty darn good. The next bonsai that we had on display is a Winterberry, and if you saw our previous video on why I took this tree out of its show pot and put it in the box, you'll kind of know what my critique of this tree. I thought, the fruiting on this was pretty spectacular, and so I wanted to show off, that fruiting aspect. We don't see many deciduous hollies in the United States. This is one of the few, especially for its age, and so getting able to show that off in a room and celebrate those fruit I thought was really fun. Ideally I'd love to see this tree have a bit more density, as I discussed in that previous video, and I'd love to see a few more lower trunks so that not all the density is kind of higher up on the tree. So we put it in a box after we brought it home from the exhibit, and we're going to try and spend the next 5 to 10 years making this tree another 5% better, because that's really the fun part about bonsai in general, is always striving for that next level and working towards that. For me, the pot for this tree in the exhibit was actually a little bit small, so next time we put this in a pot to display it, we're going to put it in a wider pot so that it doesn't look so out of proportion with the silhouette of the tree. But it was a real fun thing to be able to celebrate this tree in the exhibit, document its place in time before we go ahead and make some big improvements to it. Now, the last tree that I shared at the Pacific Bonsai Expo was my winter hazel. Now, I actually have a few winter hazel here at RAKUYO, but this is probably the one that I am most famous for, and it was really a joy to show it off. This tree, there's not too much I want to change on this tree. It's rare that a bonsai is kind of exactly how you want it for displaying in a show, but this tree was very close to there. I was really, really thrilled of the work that we've done on this tree over the last few years to gain this level of density, which is hard for a large leaf plant. but a good testament for that fact, actually, because, you know, this winter hazel has leaves the size of my hand. And the fact that you can yield this quality of ramification with such a large leaf is a testament to the years of partial defoliation that I've been doing, and that previous owners, both in the United States and Japan, from where this tree was imported. It's a good testament to the really nice, careful, calculated work that Deciduous Bonsai is doing that year after year to yield this type of quality branching. And so showing it off was a real honor. To be in a room with all of the quality trees at the Pacific Bonsai Expo was an honor. You know, this was the best exhibit I've ever seen in North America, and I think it's just only going to get better. And so to win a prize, you know, this tree won Best Deciduous, and I was very, very honored to win a prize. But honestly, just to be in a room with so many quality trees, that was the real honor for me. So I hope you enjoyed this little recap of my favorite deciduous bonsai from the 2022 Pacific Bonsai Expo. We are having a Pacific Bonsai Expo in 2024, so be sure to mark your calendars. That is in October of 2024 in Oakland, California. That's going to be our second Pacific Bonsai Expo. I'm going to submit a few trees for display, and I hope you do too. And then we'll be there, RAKUYO, of course, in the vending area with lots of fun deciduous material available for purchase. So I hope you can make it. If you want to help support the Pacific Bonsai Expo and haven't purchased the 2022 catalog already, the sales for this book really help us put on a second exhibit. So if you haven't already, go check out the Pacific Bonsai Expo website and buy a catalog because that really helps support our nonprofit organization. I'm Andrew Robson. You've been watching RAKUYO's Deciduous Bonsai channel. I hope to see you at the next Pacific Bonsai Expo in 2024.